Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Music of the Hemispheres. I'm Matt in the UK, and over in Melbourne, Australia, is, as always, my cousin and co-presenter Will. Hey, Will.
Hey Matt, great to be with you. So, just before we get into the episode, just a little reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube, and we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram as well at Music of the Hemispheres. Really looking forward to this episode, Matt. What do we have in store?
Yeah, so we realised that we'd accidentally been very New York centric in our first two episodes of the show, covering Fountains of Wayne and Simon and Garfunkel. And as we're both Australians, we thought we should represent with a beginner's guide to Crowded House, who are, I would say, an Australian institution at this point. They rose from the ashes of split ends, with singer and guitarist Neil Finn and drummer Paul Hester recruiting bass player Nick Seymour to create Crowded House. They've kind of featured a revolving cast of members over the years. The only perennial members are actually Neil Finn and Nick Seymour. We'll talk about some of the other members of the band later on, but we can't really move on without mentioning the very sad death of drummer Paul Hester in 2005. He was a massively entertaining and talented musician, I would say, and a huge part of the personality of the band as well. They were a real live force in the 80s and 90s, and he was a huge part of that. The band won a Q Award for Best Live Artist in 92. They won a Brit Award for Best International Artist in 94. And that sat along 14 ARIA Awards. So very much a celebrated band back in Australia, but also popular around the world. They broke up in 1996 and Finn concentrated on his solo career until after Hester's death, after which they did reconvene and have recorded and toured sporadically for the last 20 years or so. The discography today includes 8 studio albums, which we will be ranking. They can generally be divided into the 4 which they recorded during their initial run in the 80s and 90s, and then the later 4 that have been released with much less frequency since 2006 when they reformed. So anything you want to add there, Will, about Crowded House before we get going?
I grew up on Crowded House. My parents played a lot of them, so they have a lot of nostalgic value and sentimental value for me, particularly their best of. But I really enjoyed listening to their full discography here, and I'm looking forward to getting into the nuts and bolts of it.
Great. So today we're going to each quickly run through our number 8 to number 6 picks to start with, so we can spend more time discussing our top 5 albums. Do you want to kick us off today, Will?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So, number 8 for me is their latest release, Gravity Stairs from 2024, which unfortunately I'm giving 1.5 stars. So, it's quite flat. The melodies don't really grab me, they just don't really penetrate. It's well produced and has some interesting arrangements, but I do think that it has some of their worst tracks in Oh Hi and Teenage Summer. It's just not really for me, just quite bland. I accept that some people think it's maybe better than some of their previous albums. Number 7 is going to be Dreamers Are Waiting, which is from 2021, and I'm giving this 2 stars. I find the melodies a little more punchy and memorable here than on the album I just talked about. I quite like the middle patch, particularly Sweet Tooth with its laid back shuffle and its bluesy feel. Whatever You Want and Show Me the Way are also quite strong tracks. So that run from tracks 4 to 7 is good. But I think it's a poor album lyrically, and Neil Finn has just written so many better songs. I find about half of the songs just don't really engage me at all. Number 6 is for me Time on Earth, which is from 2007, which I'm also giving 2 stars. I do like it a little better, but the main thing for me is that it's way too long. It's probably weighed down by 5 or 6 tracks, like Say That Again and Pour Le Monde, tracks that just sort of plod along for me. I do think, however, it's quite a brave record. It was written in the wake of Paul Hester's death, and there's a number of songs that reference that, such as Heaven That I'm Making, which is a real highlight for me. There's a really curious song in She Called Up, which is quite uplifting, or at least it sounds that way, but it does reference the time where Neil Finn received the call about Paul's death. Walk Her Way Down is another really strong highlight for me down the order. The songs are a bit more poignant and more personal, so that's why I have it higher than the other 2, but still not my favorite. So over to you, Matt.
So we differ here a fair amount right from the off. My number eight is one of the more recent albums, but it's Intriga from 2010. And I've given that my lowest rating of any album we've done so far on the show at 1 star. I listened to all of the albums again in full chronological order to give them a fair crack when I was doing my rankings and my ratings, but this is still a huge dud for me. It's like wading through sludge for 40 minutes. It's slow. It lacks catchy melodies or any of their usual songwriting prowess and just doesn't connect with me emotionally at all. The opener, Sunday Sun, is fine, but it's downhill from there, unfortunately. So one to skip for me, Intriga at number eight. My number seven is also Dreamers Awaiting, same as you, and I've also given it 2 stars. So it's the first time Neil Finn got his sons into the act. It's got more energy than Intriga, which is why I've given it an extra star. And it sounds more like a band album than a collection of kind of Neil Finn solo cast-offs. Like I say, I'm still really not loving it at 2 stars, but the highlight for me is Too Good for This World, which is a really loose mid-tempo vibe. I really like how kind of shonky it sounds in the intro section, and it's got a memorable chorus, which is in very short supply on this record. So there's nothing terrible here. It's just really light on hooks, which is really what I'm looking for in a Crowded House record. So number seven is Dreamers Awaiting. And my number six is my first from the initial run of 4 albums before they split. And it's the debut Crowded House from 1986, which I've given 3 stars. So from this point on, these are all albums that I do like, but this is the bottom of the pile of those that I would choose to listen to, if you like. The 1-2 punch at the top of the album with Mean to Me, with the big harmonies and the horns, straight into World Where You Live, which opens up into that big spacious chorus, is a brilliant opening for the album. It's also got some stone cold classics like Don't Dream It's Over, Something So Strong, Hole in the River, Love You Till the Day I Die. But the standard really drops on the last 4 tracks, in my opinion. And that big 80s production gets a bit tiring for me. So my number 6 is the self-titled debut.
Well, okay, so that really surprised me with your number 6 there, the debut. So that's put a spanner in the works a little bit. So for me, number 5 is the last one that's at a subpar rating. So I've still got 2 stars, but stay with me because things get a lot better. I've got Intriga from 2010. So this is the one that you had at the bottom. It's pretty close to 2.5. I think I really enjoy Either Side of the World, which is track 4. It has this lovely shuffling verse and really comes to life in the chorus. I particularly like when Neil sings Luxury and Leisure Never Meant Pleasure. And I just think that's one of their strongest new era Crowded House tracks. The opener, Saturday Sun, I think offers us something different. It's a bit spacey and just something a bit out of the box. Has a great solo in it as well. Isolation at track 6 is probably one of my favorite songs from this second iteration of Crowded House. Very dreamy. I don't really love the section at the end where it basically transforms the song. So if it weren't for that, it would be probably in my top 10 later. But I have to say, half of this album, or at least half of it, is quite average. So I don't love it, but it's at 40 minutes. It doesn't hang around for too long. So that's why I had it a bit higher than the others. Intriga.
Okay, fair enough. So my number 5 is your number 8. So we've switched around there. It's the most recent record, Gravity Stairs from 2024. I'm giving it the same rating as the debut at 3 stars. And I do really like this record. It's the one where I think they've really reaped the rewards of bringing Neil Finn's 2 sons, Liam and Elroy, into the band. So Liam's now the guitarist and backing vocalist, and Elroy is the drummer. They've shared the songwriting out a bit more on this album, so it has some fresh ideas. Liam wrote one of the songs, and both Liam and Elroy have co-writing credits on others, which makes it a bit more diverse than the previous 2, Intriga and Dreamers Awaiting. It's quite a somber start with magic piano, which is almost like a 70s Elton John vibe, but it leads really nicely into Teenage Summer, which, although it doesn't have clear sections, it has a kind of stream of consciousness vibe to it, and it's super catchy. I know you said that was one of your least favourites, but I quite like it. And one of their best singles, I'd say, off the latter 4 albums. The highlight of the album is a track I'll talk about later on, but Other tracks I'd highlight are All That I Can Ever Own, which very much sounds like a 1-0 era Neil Finn solo track to me, and I really love that album. Some Greater Plan for Claire is a lovely little waltz time thing, which could be a bit dull, but it lifts into a really nice chorus. I like that. And Blurry Grass, which is a Neil and Elroy Finn co-write, is probably the most solid groove on the record, with this kind of really spacey psychedelic breakdown in the middle. I don't care at all for Oh Hi. It's really cheesy. I could not agree with you more on that one. And Blackwater White Circle is really lush kind of 60s style track, but has no hook in it whatsoever. So I could do without that one as well. So not a perfect album by any stretch, but for me, a decent, solid 3-star record, Gravity Stairs.
Yeah, great. So, as you might have been able to tell already, their first four albums will be my top four, but which order are they going to be in? Well, number four is Woodface, which is their third album from 1991. It pains me a little bit to have it at four because it does have some of their absolute best tracks, such as Weather With You, which is so effortless and uplifting. It's got Fall at Your Feet, Four Seasons in One Day, which is quite solemn but very beautiful. So there's plenty of highlights here, even some album tracks that I quite like, such as There Goes God. But I do find it goes on a bit too long towards the end and just stretches things. So it has a bit of a downturn in that second half. I think that Crowded House are generally pretty good writing romantic songs, but they just feel a bit cheesy here. Songs like Italian Plastic and How Will You Go, She Goes On, these types of tracks, I think they fall well short of what's been set up on the first half of the album. Although I have to say, the song As Sure As I Am is probably my highlight of that second half. But overall, it is a really good album. It's one that has a lot of nostalgia for me, and I enjoy coming back to it. So this is really strong stuff. And it was an album where Tim Finn was a permanent member. So Tim and Neil are in fine form here. Woodface, 3.5 stars.
I'm pretty shocked that's down at number 4 for you, but fair enough. My number 4 is the second record, Temple of Low Men from 1988, which I've given 3 stars. So it's my third 3-star rating in a row for Crowded House. A lot of their albums are pretty much on a level for me. I feel very similar to this album as I do the debut. The highs are ridiculously high. Some may feature in my list of songs later on. I Feel Possessed is an amazing opener. It really sets the scene. It's a super tight groove, but that groove then is just setting you up for the huge euphoric chorus that comes after it. A really great arrangement. Into Temptation is beautifully arranged as well with the string parts. Paul Hester playing with brushes over quite a hypnotic guitar arpeggio, and I really like the transitions from the first verse into the chorus and then into the second verse. It's almost like it keeps transitioning halfway through a line, which gives it this really beautiful flow to it. The other highlights are When You Come and Better Be Home Soon, but once again, I think there is some filler here which drags down my rating. Kill Eye sounds really dated to my ears. I don't like the way the melody of Mansion in the Slums scans over the music. It's just a bit clunky. Love This Life is just completely unnecessary, really. I don't understand how that made the cut. But again, like I say, huge highs and some that I just don't care for. So it comes out at 3 stars, number 4, Temple of Low Men.
So your number four is my number three, Temple of Low Men. I'm giving this 3.5 stars. I quite enjoy it. There's not too much in it between this and Woodface, but I really enjoy that compared to the debut, which I haven't talked about yet, but it's moodier, it's more brooding, there's a sort of heavier emotional weight to it, and it's got these cold synth tones, more minor keys, more tension in the songs, which I really enjoy. As you said, like I Feel Possessed is a great opener. It's got that kind of eerie keyboard kind of teetering on the edge. Into Temptation with the string arrangements is wonderful. I quite like some of the album tracks like Mansion in the Slums and Love This Life in the Lowlands. It's probably me one of the most consistent albums. There's a couple of weaker tracks, but overall I really like the sonic palette of this album. So Temple of Low Men, 3.5 stars for me, and it's my number three.
Okay, so my number 3, and I'm fully aware this may be an unpopular opinion. You had it much further down in your rankings, and that's probably more on par with the general view of it. But it's 2007's Time on Earth, which I've given 3.5 stars. And I do accept everything you said about this album, but I just really can't help but like it a lot for 2 reasons. The first one being going back to 2007, I never thought we'd get another Crowded House album. And then this record came along 14 years after their last one. So I was probably super receptive to it. And I maybe gave it more time than I would have otherwise. And as you mentioned, secondly, it's very much a tribute to Paul Hester, which makes me quite attached to it emotionally. That does make it a really somber record, but it's very full sounding, I think. And also I think what it does really well is that it manages to be introspective without being overly sentimental, which they haven't always managed to pull off elsewhere in their discography. The songs for this album were originally written for a third Neil Finn solo record, but after Hester's death, he felt it needed to be a Crowded House album, so he brought Nick Seymour and Mark Hart back into the fold. And they drafted in not one, but two of Beck's former drummers for the recording of the album. Joey Waronker, who currently plays with Oasis, came in for some of the sessions. And then as a more permanent replacement for Paul Hester, they brought Matt Sherrod in towards the end of the recording and for the tour. Like I said, I hear Paul Hester references all over this, not least in the title of the album, but also in the lyrics. The lead track, Nobody Wants to me, is about someone drowning in depression while everyone around them is just telling them that everything's going to be okay. She Called Up, as you mentioned, is about the moment Neil Finn was informed of Hester's death, although I do agree it's slightly odd in terms of its tone. Say That Again has that line at the start, it makes no sense, a long time left to understand. A Sigh has the line, no changing the story now. So the references to Paul Hester are literally all over the record, and it brings real emotional weight to it. I love the organ and the electric piano all over the record, particularly on Heaven That I'm Making. It feels very elegant and very stoic to me. The collaborators are really solid. Johnny Marr makes an appearance. The Dixie Chicks get a co-write on Silent House. So it was a very welcome return for me, and I rate it way above the other later releases in their catalogue. Number 3, Time on Earth.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I got to say, of the later ones, I think this is one that would grow on me, probably has the most potential. So I'm definitely open to that happening. So, number 2 for me is Crowded House, their debut, the self titled. I love this album. I'm giving it 4 stars. It's short and sharp. There's no fat on it. Yes, the first half is full of iconic hits, and we know what those are, and we'll probably be talking about a few of them later. The second half is less glamorous, I know, but I do enjoy these album tracks, and I think that generally they're stronger than the other albums. The 80s production really adds a bit of character, I think. So I know that it sort of tires you out by the end, but I quite enjoy it. It's a very joyful, bombastic album with a lot of their early personality. And what I always remark on is the intro to I Walk Away always reminds me of Summer of 69. Every time I just think I'm hearing Summer of 69. But I really enjoy this, and it's a very easy listen for me. And it's my number 2, Crowded House self titled from 1986, 4 stars.
Okay, my number 2 is also a 4-star record. And actually, before I listened back through all the albums, I would have had this in top spot, but it's dropped a place to number 2. And that is 1991's Woodface. So similar to you, as a young teenager, I absolutely loved this record. The start is exceptional. Again, they're very good at the top of their albums, I find. The first thing I noticed is a much more natural drum sound than you get on the first 2 albums, which immediately puts it above those records for me. It opens with that kind of upbeat, groovy chocolate cake, and then straight into a really similarly paced song in It's Only Natural, but it's far more melodic than the opener, so it feels like a step up. And then the sublime Fall at Your Feet, which everyone will be familiar with. So that's a great triple threat there at the top of the album. But the reason why it's dropped to number 2 position in my list is that following that, Tall Trees at track 4 just ruins the vibe for me. It's a bit of a return to their 80s sound, and it's just not a great song in my opinion. So it sticks out like a sore thumb against all of the classics around it on that record. It really disrupts the flow of the album for me. Weather With You is an Australian standard, and rightfully so. Fame Is underwhelms me as well, but unlike you, I think that that final run, as Sure As I Am, Italian Plastic, which was a huge live fan favourite, She Goes On, which has a bit of a Bruce Springsteen Secret Garden kind of vibe about it, and then How Will You Go is a really strong finish, and the reason why I think overall it's worth 4 stars. They really feel like a band hitting their stride here and mastering almost everything they're attempting, so my number 2 is Woodface.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I got to say, I quite like tall trees. I don't know what it is, but yeah, that's why we do this. It's interesting to see what hits us differently. So we're coming to my number one now, which is their fourth album from 1993, Together Alone. To be honest, I hadn't heard this whole record before we did this deep dive, but I'd heard a lot of the songs on it. Very pleasant surprise as an album. It's probably my favorite era of Crowded House production, and I get the sense that it's yours too. What I love about this album is there's a lot of breathing space in it. It's very simple, but at the same time, it's sophisticated, it's well thought out, it's well put together, very considered. It just seems to cut way deeper than any of their other albums. It starts wonderfully with Kari Kari, very whimsical, almost haunting, and you have that slide guitar rolling through it. There's a real purple patch in the middle of the album with a lot of their really famous songs, which we're going to talk about in more detail. But then down the order, I love the song Catherine Wheels, which is a bit of a hidden gem, in my opinion. One song I definitely cut is Skin Feeling. I just think that doesn't fit at all. It'd almost be the perfect album if you took that one away. But overall, it's a somber, introspective, very solemn album, and I think it's really beautiful. So for me, it's their number one. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. Together Alone.
Okay, as you mentioned, we do not share notes on this, but we sometimes do end up sharing the same opinion as we do here, because Together Alone is obviously also my number one, and I also have it at 4.5 stars. It was a hair's breadth away from being my first 5-star rated album, but there's a couple of things that slightly let it down, which I'll talk about in a second. This was the last album of the first phase before Paul Hester left the band. He actually left during the tour for this record, and it's jumped up to the number one spot for me, which I didn't expect. And it's not even really that close. I think this is by far their most fully realized album and brings everything I love about the band together. This was the first time they moved away from Mitchell Froome as producer. They worked with Youth on this record, and I think that was a great decision because the production is just stunning all over the record. I also think it's Paul Hester's masterpiece. The drums and percussion are exceptional throughout. Mark Hart was formerly just a touring member of the band, but they made him a full member for the recording of this album. And I think that really helped bring a different, more modern and more diverse vibe to the guitar parts on the album, which definitely helped. The writing is the strongest of all their albums. There are a few of the big loud tracks that feature on the previous three albums, but when they turn it up here, it's a bit more like an alt rock vibe rather than a big 80s anthem vibe, which again I really like. Black and White Boy and Locked Out are really good examples of that. And generally, I think it finds its groove pretty early on with the opening track, which you mentioned, and pretty much stays there without getting boring or formulaic at any point in the album. There are other elements which really expand their palette and work really well, like the discordant guitar solo on Nails in My Feet or the big overdriven guitars on Black and White Boy. They're using polyrhythmic percussion and a big Maori choir as well. If it were not for the fact that I find Walking on the Spot to be a bit dull, and I think Catherine Wheel would have been a great 3-minute song, but for some reason they unnecessarily stretch it out to over 5 minutes. This would definitely have been a 5-star album for me. Hands down, it's their masterpiece. They were always a brilliant singles band throughout their career, but this is where I think they really mastered the album format. And as me and Will both have it at number one, if you're a beginner to Crowded House, you can't go wrong with this. My number one, Together Alone, 4.5 stars.
Yeah, fantastic. And since we both have it at 4.5 stars, it does enter our Music of the Hemispheres Hall of Fame. So it's a very deserving member. Welcome. Yeah, so that was interesting, Matt. We've differed a little bit, but I guess the general trend towards their older albums is similar in both of our rankings.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say, although the ratings on the albums were a little low for both of us, if we were rating the quality of our top 10 song lists, for me, it would be 10 out of 10. They're a great singles band. And I really struggled with whittling this down to just 10 songs. Just to mention, we do have the Music of the Hemispheres Spotify account with open playlists which feature all of our picks for our top 10 songs. So you'll find the Fountains of Wayne and Simon and Garfunkel playlists on there alongside this one, and we'll keep adding to that as we produce more episodes. There's a link to this playlist in the description of the video, so go and check out these songs if you're not familiar.
Great, Matt. So do you want to start with your number 10?
Yeah, absolutely. My number 10 is a pick from Gravity Stairs, and it is The How. which was written by Liam Finn, and that makes it a real rarity in Crowded House's history, a song that wasn't written by Neil Finn. There's actually another version of this song on Liam Finn's album Hyperverse, but for me, this Crowded House version is the superior arrangement. It's a bit tighter. It's uncanny how similar Liam and Neil's voices are. I initially thought it was Neil Finn singing on this, but it's actually Liam. It's a really catchy song. He has all these little snippets of lyrics that fly out at you and stick in my mind, like, I don't want to be alone, but I could never love again. And the way he sings, I can't see the forest for the trees. It's got quite a loose arrangement and it doesn't have a real chorus, but it has these great kind of tumbling guitar lines and all of these little backing vocals that are buried in the mix and appear and then disappear again. I think there's barking in it at some point as well, all sorts going on here. But it's a really catchy tune and it's something a bit different from them. So my number 10 is The How.
Yeah, good pick. That's probably one of the songs I'm more fond of on that album. So, number 10 for me is Into Temptation. This is from Temple of Low Men, and I think we discussed it briefly before, but it has this real moody atmosphere and it's just crafted so well. It's one of those songs where you just remember how good a lyricist Neil Finn is as he sings the line, "A muddle of nervous words could never amount to betrayal." That's just incredible songwriting. The chorus has this warm, enveloping sort of quality to it, which kind of offsets the more tense verses. It's got that pitter patter brush drumming from Paul Hester, which is great. It's just really restrained where it needs to be, but really powerful at the same time. What a track, Into Temptation. I don't think many would disagree with me there.
No, super pick that. My number 9 pick is from Recurring Dream, which was their best of compilation, which featured 3 new songs, all of which were really strong, actually. There was Instinct, Not the Girl You Think You Are, and this one, my number 9 pick, Everything Is Good For You. The verse arrangements are quite sparse for Crowded House, but it has a great simple guitar line running through it. And then it moves into this chugging, slightly low key chorus, which actually feels a bit too understated until you realize that it's basically a setup for this amazingly lush and expansive bridge section that comes in after the second chorus. It's got a great melody. It's got really lovely guitar arpeggios on it. At the end, there's a riff which for me could have been ripped from a Manic Street Preachers song or something like that. So again, quite different for them, but I love it. Number 9, Everything Is Good For You.
Yeah, that's a brilliant pick. I rate that for sure. Number 9 for me is track 3 from the debut, Now We're Getting Somewhere. This is a real fan favorite, and it was somehow left off their very famous best of from 1996, Recurring Dream. It's just a great song. It's got this accordion in the intro behind Neil Finn's vocals, and then it kicks into this more upbeat, very energetic sing along. It's a great, catchy tune. It doesn't outstay its welcome, and just think it really deserves its place amongst the other very famous tracks on the first half of that album. Now We're Getting Somewhere. I've always really loved this track, so that's my number 9.
Yeah, I agree. Should have made that best of. My number 8 pick is from Time on Earth and it's English Trees, which I think is the centerpiece of Time on Earth and the real tribute to Paul Hester. So Neil Finn was on tour in London when he found out that Paul had died. So the line "In Regent's Park, I will mourn for you" is, I think, fairly autobiographical. It's not an overly sentimental song, though. I would probably describe it more as stately. It's got a really strong, steady rhythm, very tasteful horns, and Neil Finn brings his trademark poetic lyricism to the track with lines like, "England cries and she plays for him, her chords entwined like a requiem," which I think is very lovely and quite moving. But the killer part for me is that distant refrain of "You Won't Forget Me," which is mixed really far back in the mix. So it's almost like Paul is saying that, not Neil. That's a really lovely touch, I think. For me, that's the clear highlight of the later 4 releases and a beautiful song, number 8, English Trees.
Very well put there. My number 8 song is When You Come, and this is certainly one of their well known tracks. It's got a real nostalgic feel to it, I think. And I don't know whether that's just because of my having grown up with Crowded House or just the song itself. The verses also have a great anticipation about them. I just love the jangly guitar running through it. There's just some sort of magic about it that I find quite exhilarating. It's one of those tracks where Neil Finn shows his great vocal range when he's singing quite loudly as well. We forget that he's actually a really great singer. It's a little cheesy, but it doesn't overstep that mark. And it's got that trademark earnestness that Crowded House do pretty well. A magical track, When You Come, number 8.
Great stuff. So my number 7 is from Woodface, and it's Four Seasons in One Day, the title of which is taken from a common saying about the weather in Melbourne and the way it changes suddenly, which I think is a metaphor for our changing mental states and moods. I really love the lyrics with lines like "the sun shines on the black clouds hanging over the domain" and "finding out wherever there is comfort, there is pain," which is so evocative. It's a beautiful song and a real fan favourite at the shows, often with an extended a cappella sing along of the chorus into the night. Again, it's a very stately, slower track, which is almost oppressive in its slow, steady rhythm, which is propelled very much by the Nick Seymour bass line. But the cherry on the cake is a very special harpsichord solo, which is something I never thought I would say. But it's got these two different melody lines in the solo that just intertwine and wrap around each other so perfectly. Great arrangement. Number 7, Four Seasons in One Day.
Good pick. So number 7 for me is Don't Dream It's Over. And this is their flagship song, probably. Everyone knows this one. It's not my personal favorite, but it's a great song nevertheless. I just felt compelled to put it in here. It's arguably a bit overplayed, but those clean guitar chords to start the song are so iconic, and that funky little bass lead in, I just love. Again, another lyrical masterclass. The line, "Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup," sums up how great a lyricist Neil is. It's a real anthem, so I think it's deserving of its place here. I wonder whether you'll have it in yours, Matt, but that's my number 7, Don't Dream It's Over.
Yeah, an absolute classic there. My number 6 is Locked Out from Together Alone. So it's my first pick from my number 1 album, but it definitely won't be my last. It's an upbeat rocker with a pretty straight groove, but I just love the sense of freedom and openness in it. It sounds like they're really cutting loose and enjoying themselves, which isn't a vibe I get too often on their albums. It's a really good reflection, I think, of who they were as a live band at the time, with loads of energy and spirit. Just a brilliant 3-minute pop song. There's no waste whatsoever in the arrangement. I think it actually hits the first chorus within about 30 seconds of the song starting, so it's really not hanging about. The solo really keeps the energy up. Even the bridge is really energetic with the great little drum pickup back into the third verse. It's like they keep piling this energy on top of you, and it's very infectious. Really fun without being in any way cheesy. Just a great upbeat tune. Number 6, Locked Out.
So number 6 for me is also Locked Out. So I'm not going to add too much there because I agree with absolutely everything you said. It's one of their best upbeat rock songs. And I really love that refrain when they sing, "And the hills are as soft as a pillow." And they have that same melody line just with different lyrics a few times throughout the song. And it's just wonderfully crafted, so catchy. So Locked Out, I love it too. It's my number 6.
Great. So yeah, we definitely agree there. My number 5 is from the debut, Crowded House, and it's World Where You Live. So as I mentioned earlier, Mean to Me really sets the scene nicely on the album, but then this comes in, and I think this is the first really great Crowded House song. The drums are actually a bit more natural and less 80s than a lot of the other tracks on the album, so it's immediately a bit more appealing to my ears. The song centers around another super strong groove with just a killer organ part on it, but it really opens up into this expansive chorus, which has almost choral sounding backing vocals on it, which work really well. Then there's a super locked in kind of 4 on the floor bridge section before it opens up again into the solo. So just the way the dynamics flow throughout the song, I think is just brilliantly done. I love the energy, love the performances. Another really catchy tune, just great. Number 5, World Where You Live.
Yeah, great pick there. Number 5 for me comes off their fourth album, Together Alone, and it is Private Universe. This is a little bit unique in their discography from a musical perspective. I mean, it's got a range of percussive elements in there. There's a few different drums. It's got this really hypnotic effect and quite an extended intro, also an extended outro for that matter. But once it gets into the song and you've got that bass of all the percussion going on, there's a nice, simple minor chord progression. It's just really spot on. I love also the light, distorted electric guitar that kind of bleeds over into the chorus and creates some warmth in the song, a bit similar to what happens in Into Temptation. The verses are a bit more icy, a little more morose in a way. But the chorus has some warmth to it. Again, great lyrics from Neil, great understated singing. I find this a really affecting song. Private Universe, number 5.
Okay, so we've almost matched up again because my number 4 pick is also Private Universe. Just to add a couple of things to what you just said, that was very well summed up there, Will. But I think this song sums up why I think Together Alone is a real step up from all of their other work. It's just so stunningly arranged and produced. It opens up with the sound of the ocean and cars driving by and people talking before, as you mentioned, that amazing percussion track comes in. I just love the simple acoustic guitar and the keyboard washers accompanying what for me is one of Neil Finn's best ever melodies kind of tucked in there. And then that super overdriven but compressed guitar part coming in for the chorus really grounds the song, doesn't it? It builds in complexity really well with lots of overdubs, adding lots of interest throughout its running time. And I particularly love the backing vocals that come in for that third chorus. As you mentioned again, that last minute and a half of that extended outro section just washes over you. I really love the way just every now and then little high-pitched bass riffs come in on that outro section. Everything about it's just so well conceived and well executed. I can't fault it. Number 4, Private Universe.
Yeah, some great points there. Moving on to my number 4, and it comes from that same album. This is Pineapple Head. This is just such an uplifting, joyful song, marked by that bouncy, syncopated rhythm that's really undeniable and very happy in a way, but it's also got quite a yearning to it, this song, just in certain turns of phrase. Apparently, the song was conceived from a random remark that one of Finn's sons made when he was young. I don't know whether it was Liam or Alroy, but as far as I understand, that's how it came to be. So it's obviously a little obtuse with its lyrics and its title, but we don't really need to understand the exact meaning of it all. It's just a really joyful song, and it's always been one of my personal favorites. So it lands at number 4 for me, Pineapple Head.
The other thing I love about that song is that whirling, almost carnival-like organ part in the choruses. Love that. My number 3 pick is from Temple of Low Men, and it's I Feel Possessed, which is my first pick, I think, from that album in my list. For me, this is very similar to World Where You Live in that it has a really tight verse groove, which is driven by the bass guitar, but then it opens up into this huge chorus, which sounds absolutely amazing. I have kind of discovered through doing this deep dive that one of the things I think I respond to most in their music is the groovy tight verse into huge open chorus kind of vibe that they do quite often, but they do it so well on this. It beats World Where You Live just because I think that the melody and the lyrics are a bit stronger with great lines like, we are one person, not two of a kind. What was mine is now in your possession. The harmonies as well are great in the chorus and really help it lift off. Really nice organ parts, especially in the outro section. I really like the downbeat, sparse third verse as well. Just everything about it really sucks me in. So my number 3 is I Feel Possessed.
That's not in my top 10, but I do really enjoy that song. So number 3 for me, this is a real classic, Weather With You, a true Crowded House staple, which many love. It's similar to my last pick. There's a real careless energy about it, really free spirit about it. It's very jaunty, it's very loose, quite lighthearted. It has some lines in there that I love. I don't necessarily know what they're getting at, like Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire couldn't conquer the blue sky. Even that first line, walking around the room singing stormy weather at 57 Mount Pleasant Street, that sounds like maybe a childhood memory or something like that. Musically, the jangly tone of that guitar is just undeniable, and the doubling up of the vocals is a really nice effect here. One of my favorites at number 3, Weather With You. This is off Woodface, by the way.
One of the things that really lift Woodface for me are those harmonies between Neil and Tim Finn. They harmonize so well together, and it's probably best on that song, isn't it? We're getting right to the sharp end. My number 2 pick is specifically a live version of one of their tracks. It's Fingers of Love, which was originally on the album Together Alone, but I'm picking the live version from their Farewell to the World concert at Sydney Opera House in 1996. The album version is much more understated. It's got super lo-fi drums, a more laid-back vocal, but they really turn everything up to 11 on the live track, and it really works for me. The drums are huge. There's big tom fills and big cymbal washers all over the place. I think Neil Finn goes for it a lot more with the vocal delivery as well. And The guitar work from Mark Hart is just much freer and looser. I think it's their best ever attempt at a big stadium anthem with real weight to it. I love the lyrics as well. It opens with the lines, "Can you imagine that? An itch too sensitive to scratch, the light that falls through the cracks, an insect too delicate to catch," which is a great opening for the song. But even better is the way Neil Finn delivers that line, "I'm playing in the shallow water, laughing while the mad dog sleeps," on this live version. I almost put this at number one. It was a really close run thing. I absolutely love this. I listen to it very often. Fingers of Love, the live Farewell to the World version, is my number two.
All right, number 2 is Fall at Your Feet. And I suspect it might be your number one. I could be wrong. Again, this is one of their most well known songs. Seems to be talking about relationships and emotional vulnerability, intimacy. It's so understated with its melodies and also the instrumentation. Nothing is played too loud. It's very delicately sung with such restraint. I think that's one of Neil's great strengths as a vocalist. He can obviously sing very loud and has a very strong voice, but he knows how to hold things back. He has really good control, and that makes it a really beautiful song. And he does all of this in the space of about 3.5 minutes. So it's just wonderfully put together. Fall at Your Feet is my number 2.
Great. So before I reveal my number one pick, some honorable mentions. They're just a great pop band with so many hits, so many great singles. So I found this almost impossible, but I had on my long list Whispers and Moans, Teenage Summer from Gravity Stairs, which you really didn't rate, In My Command, and quite a few that you had in your list. So I'm glad you had them. Don't Dream It's Over, Pineapple Head, Weather With You. And I also had to cut Fall at Your Feet, despite the fact that I really do love all of those songs. But my number one pick is from Together Alone, and it's Distant Sun, which is my third pick from Together Alone in my top five. Maybe slightly an obvious choice for some, and in a sense it's just a very standard mid-tempo Crowded House song, but it just ticks every box for me. It's a huge live favourite. It's got that lovely open crisp production to it. It's melodically superb, amazing harmonies, a really simple arrangement actually, where everything just does exactly what it needs to do to serve the vocals and the melody. I really love how he goes up an octave halfway through the verse, which just really shifts the dynamic of the song, even though everything else in the track is just carrying on as it was. It's one of their catchiest ever choruses, and I have to call out the part at the end of the bridge where he sings, "I don't pretend to know what you want, but I offer love," and that just seamlessly melts into this great guitar solo. That is on its own my favourite Crowded House moment of all time, so I had to pick this as my number one track from Together Alone. It's Distant Sun.
That is a wonderful pick. I fully endorse that, and it might surprise you to know that that is my number one. So we've ended up on the same one there. I echo a lot of what you say. I love how it explores relationships and connection, but with celestial imagery. So it's not sort of straight up with its lyricism, it's a little bit oblique. So, for example, with the line, "Your seven worlds collide whenever I'm by your side. Dust from a distant sun will shower over everyone." That's just amazing lyrics there. I love the octave higher in the verse that you mentioned. My absolute favorite Crowded House moment is just after the bit that you said, where it comes back into the chorus and Neil sings, "Seven worlds will collide" instead of "Your seven worlds collide." That's just absolute 10 out of 10 moment for me and shows why he's a master songwriter. And I have to give credit to the whole band, really. So, yes, it's very comfortably at number one for me. Yeah, Distant Sun.
This is the third time we've shared our number one track. At some point we will differ, I'm sure, but it hasn't happened as yet. Other than that, I've really enjoyed talking about Crowded House, Will, a band that I've loved for almost as long as I can remember. So really great taking this trip down memory lane with you and re-listening to all of the albums. And hopefully, if you're new to Crowded House, this has been useful in turning you on to what we think are the best albums and songs from their catalogue.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it too, Matt. They're a great singles band, as you mentioned earlier, but I guess more importantly, they have a great legacy in Australian/New Zealand music and just iconic. We hope you've gotten a lot out of this episode, and if you're not familiar with them, that you have some entry point now. That was great. I'll see you on the next episode, Matt.
Yeah, our next episode will feature our first UK artist. I won't say any more about that now, but really looking forward to that one too. So I'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Will.
Okay, catch you then.